Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gridiron 2022. Dr. Ron Poniewasz, joined by Professor Larry Kelly. He is the varsity baseball head coach at Shenango, a member of the Luxembourg, Garbutt, Kelly & George law firm, and he is one half of the Gridiron team that is the award-winning Gridiron team, I may add. And we welcome him aboard this week for another Gridiron Show. Welcome aboard, Larry. Thank you for joining us.
Ronnie, listen, I am proud to be an award-winning journalist. That was my first love. Always wanted to be a journalist. I was an English major in college, wrote for the student newspaper, started my professional career with the Newcastle News. And yeah, I like the sound of that. Award-winning journalist, Ron, Larry, and Pete. I like it. So yeah, thanks for having me.
I just got to give you one subtle reminder or hint for you. When you say you first love, you're supposed to look left, look right, look everywhere to make sure that there's nobody that you might offend within earshot.
Well, my first academic love was always wanted to be a journalist. Yes.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, we welcome Larry back aboard. And this week we've got our athlete of the week. We're going to tell you about a kid that was pretty much all over the field Friday night for his team. Offense, defense, special teams, you name it. Larry Kelly will talk to you about the Red Hurricane and the Red Hurricane report. And then, as we told you last week, we have our rankings. Larry has put his rankings together. I have mine together. They've been sealed, hermetically sealed in a mayonnaise jar on Funk and Wagnall's porch until noon today. Nobody knows the contents of these rankings except your divine intervention, if you have such an intervention. And
the Magnificent, one of my favorite Johnny Carson skits. Karnak, in fact, I asked an expert witness in a trial one time if he ever watched Johnny Carson, and are you familiar with who Karnak the Magnificent was? And he said, yeah, well, why do you ask? I said, well, you're able to predict that my client's going to die here in the next year or two. You must be like Karnak. And I said, by the way, I got a life insurance premium coming up. Should I pay it or am I going to die too? I need to know. Tell the jury and everybody.
Larry Kelly, he must be a real peach in court, everybody.
Got to make them laugh once in a while. You got to make.
Absolutely. We like Karnak. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's talk about Landon Smith.
Yeah, Landon Smith from Laurel High School, a 5'8", 150-pound senior running back, defensive back. He had 15 carries Friday night and 175 yards and 2 touchdowns, runs of 70 and 1. And the 1-yard run was the game-winning touchdown in overtime as the Spartans beat Union 28-22. He also returned a kickoff 48 yards in the second half that set up a touchdown, a Chase Tinsman touchdown run. And Smith also intercepted 2 passes. If that wasn't enough, he was in on 9 tackles and assisted on 3 others. So he, like I said, he was all over the field on Friday night for the Spartans.
Was that a great football game? I think those are 2 of the best teams in the county, Laurel and Union. It was a great game and went to overtime. And big time players play big in big games, and that's what Landon Smith did, not only offensively but defensively. He's a football player, and he probably reminded a lot of the Laurel Spartan fan base of a guy named Luke McCoy, who was a football player now, who continued his career up at Slippery Rock. So it was a magnificent performance in a magnificent game. And I think that's what big time players do. Play your best in big time games. I've always said, from a baseball analogy, when the score's 10-0, anybody can get 3 hits. I want the guys that when the pressure gets so high, you can't spit and the games mean everything. Those are the guys I'm looking for who get 3 hits in games like that. And Landon Smith got 3 hits in that game against Union. What a great football game.
Yeah, that game had everything. It was a county rivalry. It had overtime. It had that element of, gee, I hate to see anybody lose a game like that. Plus, while you could say on one hand it's early in the season, really in a way it's you're at the halfway point. You can't afford to be losing games, and that was such a huge game for both teams. Laurel, which had a bye the previous week, really solidified their shot of winning a conference crown, whereas Union now is going to have to hope that somebody can knock them off and take care of business. But getting back to Landon Smith, Larry, they were down 16-7 going in the fourth quarter, and he was able to come up big with some big runs and just a do-it-all kid. As you mentioned, they've transitioned well from Luke McCoy, who's at Slippery Rock, and now it's Landon Smith. So kind of like Wilmington in a way. They don't rebuild. They just kind of reload.
Well, that's the way it looks. I mean, 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, one a 70-yard run right after Union had scored. They really changed the complexion and the momentum of the game. Again, big-time plays from a big-time player, certainly worthy of Athlete of the Week. You guys have gotten it right a couple weeks in a row now. I give you credit.
Wow. How about that? Praise from Larry Kelly. I got a pen.
Yeah, mark it down, because you guys don't always get it right, but the last 2 weeks, you've gotten it right.
I got to write this down. Praise from Larry Kelly.
Yeah, wow. You can write it down. What's the date today? Put it down. Put it in a book. Yeah. Because it doesn't happen too often. You guys don't always get it right. And it would be nice if you would ask my opinion on this once in a while. I mean, I am part of the program, am I not? I am part of the staff. I mean, you should call up and say, hey, Larry, who you think is the Athlete of the Week? But I don't get that phone call. I don't. But that's okay. You guys, 2 weeks in a row, have been right on. Good call.
It's been busy the couple times we've tried.
Yeah, right. You know how to get a hold of me. When you need me, you always seem to get that phone call through.
Oh, yeah. All right. So Landon Smith is our Athlete of the Week. And as Larry was somewhat mentioning how we got it right, remember, Landon Smith also had a huge game earlier this season. He had a 5-touchdown game against Mohawk earlier in the year. So a big performance by Landon Smith is certainly nothing new to him or the program. That 5-touchdown game, although it came against Mohawk. Remember, Mohawk was coming off their hazing suspension, so they were kind of the new kids on the field, so to speak.
The difference was that game where he scored 5 touchdowns was in a blowout. This game was in a dogfight.
Right.
And when they needed him the most, he stood tall. The kid's a football player, and he came to play on Friday night. Great game, great victory for Laurel.
Yeah, these were two great football teams on display Friday night for sure. All right, so Laurel is now 1-0 in the Big 7, 3-1 overall. They host Rochester on Friday night. Rochester, coached by Shenango graduate Gene Matsuk. The Rams are 2-0 in conference, 3-1. So another big game. They're really, no matter who you've talked to over the years for a coach in the Big 7, and like we mentioned last week with the Parkway or the MAC, there's no breathers in the Big 7.
No,
so
there's no breather. Rochester, they'll be waiting for Laurel. That's going to be a great game also.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, that is our Athlete of the Week segment. That is Landon Smith of Laurel. Congratulations to him for helping his team to a 28-22 overtime win.
There's one thing I learned growing up around here. People should look out for each other. Be friends and neighbors that you can count on. So it bothers me when people who are hurt in automobile accidents get bullied by the insurance company. I don't let bullies run over my clients. I do what I was taught growing up. Step up, stand up, and speak up for those who can't. I'm Larry Kelly, and I'm a Newcastle guy.
Here we're back with you here on Gridiron. This is our ranking segment. Ron Poniewasz, Larry Kelly. Mr. Kelly, sir, your rankings. We will let you go first, and our format will be Larry will reveal his number 8. I will reveal my number 8, and then he will go right to 7, my 7, and so on. So, Larry, here you go, sir.
Yeah, I think my number 8 would still be Elwood City, even though they have a win this year. I think it's a program that's still in development. I mean, they went about 3 years without winning a game. And, they've been struggling, and some of the scores have been lopsided. So they're a program in development, but, they're not quite there yet. But they're working at it.
My 8 is Shenango, 0-5, the county's lone winless team. They've been outscored 162-49. Larry, I know you're in Shenango's corner, rightfully so. Can I get a wildcat growl from you at least?
Well, you picked them 8th because you don't know anything about football. See, that's your problem. You would not have picked them 8th. They're playing with basically 9th and 10th graders, and so you have to take that into consideration. And they just played Rochester, one of the best teams in the Whippeal, year in and year out. They're right there for the Whippeal championship. The score was 22-8. They didn't win, but they didn't get blown out. So they are making progress. So, I will accept that as a statement from a guy who really knows nothing about football. So you have Shenango 8. Go ahead. I'm on.
Shenango 8, struggling, outscored by their opponents 162-49. Like you always say, when the lights are on and the scoreboard's on, you're going for wins.
But you got to see, is the team making progress? Are they making progress? That's just why they're not 8th on my list. But okay, from a guy that doesn't know anything about football and still roots for the Patriots, we'll accept that. My number 7, Newcastle High School. And
Wow.
They're 7 because of it doesn't look like they're making progress. And I know they're playing tougher competition than any school in Lawrence County. But, the last 3 games, each passing game has gotten worse. And they're young. I haven't given up hope. But right now, I have them 7th.
Okay. I struggled with my 6 and 7. So I went with Elwood City as my 7. They're 1-4. They snapped a 27-game losing streak this season, earlier in the season. As I was going through my list earlier of previous years, do you remember? And I remembered, I just didn't realize the number was up this high. Like around 2007, for about 3 years, they had a 31-game losing streak, and that takes some doing for a team to essentially rack up a 58-game losing streak over that time, or 58 losses in such a condensed amount of time. So this program's got a long ways to go. But Dan Bradley, I think, is the guy to get it done. They've got to win. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for baby steps somewhere, and that win is right there. They got Riverside later in the year with the old standby, the Rivell Cup, as you well know.
I do.
But yeah, I have Elwood City as number 7.
Understandable. I mean, again, it's a program that has struggled mightily over the years. But even though they're not there yet, I think they are making some progress.
Yeah.
But it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And, that's probably, they're either going to be 7 or 8 in this list as we move forward.
Okay, 6.
Now, my number 6 is Shenango. And yes, they've been outscored 162-49. But I thought they stood tall against Rochester, a team that is a perennial contender in the WPIAL, year in and year out, one of the best teams. And, score was 22-8. It was a highly contested game, and Shenango's playing with 9th and 10th graders on the field. And in high school, that's pretty tough. 9th and 10th graders don't beat juniors and seniors. Just doesn't happen, for a lot of reasons. But I have Shenango right now in that spot, number 6.
Okay. My number 6 is Newcastle. Newcastle's 1-4. They've been outscored 206-34 since a 49-0 win over Summit Academy in the season opener. Summit Academy is a 1A school. They compete in the same conference as Laurel, Union, Shenango, also known as the Big 7. So while 49-0 looks good on paper, that's a 4A against a 1A. And a lot of times I've seen Newcastle play twice this year. Armstrong and Friday night against Central Valley. They have at times look like they don't know what they're doing in terms of lining up. They take bad penalties, lining up off sides to give a first down in a punt formation, just things like that. the things like that, they have to be stopped. They have to be turned around to get this program going in the right direction. And that's why I struggled with either them at 7 or at 6 with Elwood, but I landed with Elwood at 7 and Newcastle at 6.
Well, again, my only concern about Newcastle is I know they're playing really, really tough competition, but the losses in the last 3 games have been worse. 54-0. Before that was 43-6 or something. And before that, at least they hung with Armstrong for the first half. So, but it's all about the players, Ronnie. It's all about, you can have Vince Lombardi coaching this Newcastle team, but when they're putting 9th and 10th graders out there, much like Shenango, against varsity competition, against Central Valley, against West Allegheny, against Aliquippa, this is what you're going to get.
Okay. Number 5, sir.
Mohawk. Listen, I give them credit. They beat New Brighton. They've been competitive. This is a team that's had 3 weeks where there was no practice, no games, no scrimmages. And unlike Newcastle, I think they have gotten progressively better each week. And that's why I have them 5th.
We agree on number 5 because I also have Mohawk number 5. Mohawk is 1-2, and they are a defensive stop away against Riverside from being 2-1 and probably being a little higher on this list. And Riverside, a lot of people will say, yeah, but who's Riverside? How good is Riverside? Well, right now, at least for this week, going into Friday night, because they play Beaver Falls Friday night, do the Panthers. They're atop the conference standings. Riverside is. So, you knock off Riverside in that game. Not only are you going up the list here, but you're practically in the discussion for right at the top of the Midwestern Athletic Conference.
I give that team and that coaching staff a lot of credit. Again, those first 2 or 3 games, they were absolutely behind the 8 ball because, no practice time, no scrimmage, no game 0 where you get to work out some of the kinks. But they've played well, and I give them credit, and that's why I have them at number 5. Listen, I think the fact that you've moved them into the 5 spot, I have a little more respect for your football acumen now.
Thanks, Larry. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. It really does. All right. Tell me about number 4.
Number 4. This is a shocker. It's the Wilmington Greyhounds.
Wow.
They haven't been in the 4 spot since we've been doing this show. However, big win against Hickory, really big win. And then they lose to Sharon. They lost the opener. For them to have 2 losses at this point of the season is almost unheard of. But the reason they're 4 is not because they are not a good football team. They are. It's because the teams that are ahead of them are really good football teams. So no slight here, not trying to slight the Greyhounds. They've been the gold standard for football in Lawrence County for as long as we've been doing this show. But this year, I just think there's a few teams that are better.
Yep. Wow. Write it down. We agree on number 4. We might be agreeing a good bit here on the last few because as the teams, the number of teams to choose from lessens, we might be agreeing a little more. But yeah, we agree on number 4, Wilmington. They are 3-2. They started slow in wins against Greenville and Hickory. 7-0. They trailed to Greenville. I think going to the 4th quarter or late 3rd quarter, they trailed 14-0 to Hickory on the road after 3 quarters and won with a late 2-point conversion within inside of about 10 seconds left. Friday night, they started down 21-0 at the half against Sharon. So these slow starts are very concerning to me, Larry. And I know we've talked about this in previous years that teams kind of have a trait about them, whether it's, you struggle in the second half or you play poorly in the first half, or you have that knack for turning the ball over in key spots in the red zone or something like that. It seems like Wilmington's knack or their trait is slow starts. And I'm not really sure what they could do to get out of that. Maybe, scripted plays better? I'm not sure.
Here's the metric. Again, it comes down to, in high school football, being able to run the ball and being able to stop the run. And Wilmington historically has been the absolute best at both of those. And this year they have struggled. Against Sharon, they rushed the ball for only 84 yards. That's unheard of. Wilmington would have 84 halfway through the first quarter, and they gave up 329 rushing yards. You're not going to beat too many teams doing that, and that certainly isn't Wilmington football. But, you know, it's, again, they're probably playing some young guys. You know, they have dominated the line of scrimmage for a lot of years, and, you know, they're just not doing it this year.
Yeah, one thing that definitely says about Wilmington in particular is tough McConaughey, because they have to open it up a little more in the fourth quarter when you're down 2 touchdowns to a team like Hickory on the road. They're putting the ball in his hands and he's getting it done. So it's showing that Tough McConaughey, the quarterback, can get it done through the air instead of just figuring out which way they're going to run the ball, left or right or up the middle. So kudos to Wilmington and what Tough McConaughey has done at Wilmington under center. So that is number 4. We agree on number 4. 3 teams left, Larry. Let's see if we can match these 3. You're number 3.
When I saw Union play a couple of weeks ago, I thought they were the best team in Lawrence County. And they still might be one of the best teams in Lawrence County. They're certainly there. They're right there. And I have them 3. You know, they lost a tough game to Laurel. But I mean, they ran the ball for almost 200 yards. They passed it for 150 yards. They outgained Laurel 296 to 242. You know, they did everything that you would expect a team to do to win a football game. And unfortunately, they lost in overtime. My top 3 teams, which you will hear here, they're this close. They really are. And had Union beaten Laurel, they'd have been my number 1 team. But
wow.
They're sitting number 3 now.
Okay. I also agree. Union, I have them number 3. Union is 3-2. They're a defensive breakdown or 2 in the fourth quarter against Laurel, away from being 4-1. They've played a tough schedule, so they haven't played the Little Sisters of the Poor every week. They're playing good competition. Week 1, they played Canton, and I don't think anybody around the county knew of Canton or who they are or anything, unless you're a diehard knowing the brackets and how they break down in the state playoffs. But that was a team that had made the state semifinals 3 years in a row, and here they come, long bus ride to Union. I mean, we have questions. We could probably have questions about that. How would they play against a team like Canton, being Union, if Canton was able to drive here and maybe stay the night and then play the next night, you know, whereas they're not riding on a long bus and things like that. You know, is it the same type of game? Because a lot of people could say, well, geez, they're, you know, Union's at home, you know, they're benefiting from the other team hauling it in a bus for a few hours. But hey, you know what? The bottom line is they were in that game. They were down 5 or 6 points late mid fourth quarter, so they battled against that team. And like I said, they're a defensive breakdown or 2 away against Laurel from being 4-1. And again, they were winning 16-7 against Laurel going to the fourth quarter. So that's a 2-score game going to the fourth quarter.
Listen, Union's a good football team, and you're right. They come within a few plays of being, if not undefeated, at least 4-1. That's a good football team. And there's, like I said, the difference between them and the number 1 team in my estimation is not very much.
Number 2, Larry.
Neshannock, which makes Laurel then number 1. Now, you know, Neshannock was undefeated going into the game against Beaver Falls, and, you know, they got shut out, which surprised me. And, you know, Beaver Falls, talking to Coach Mangino, played a really good, really disciplined game on the defensive side of the ball. And, you know, that's what you have to do. You know, Neshannock ran the ball for 181 yards, which is excellent, but they passed it for 31. You know, you got to be a little more balanced. And the big difference in the game was Beaver Falls rushed the ball for over 300 yards. And hence the final score, I believe 22-0. And I have Neshannock number 2. They're a good football team. And they just ran into a buzzsaw against Beaver Falls. Beaver Falls is really good.
I have Laurel as my number 2 team. Laurel is 3-1 overall, a gutty 28-22 overtime road win over Union, which puts Neshannock as number 1. So if you need to talk about number 1 anymore, have at it, and then I'll tell you about.
Well, I mean, look, I can understand why Neshannock beat Laurel. It was an overtime game mode. That game could have went any way. It was double overtime, maybe triple overtime.
At least 2.
Yeah, but the reason I have Laurel number 1, this Union football team is really, really good. And I give Laurel a lot of respect for going on the road. It wasn't a long bus ride, but they beat Union at Union. It was a great game. And, you look at their statistics, they ran it for over 200. They held Union under 200. And the differentiating factor with Neshannock is they gave up 329 yards on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I just can't have the number 1 team giving up that kind of yardage. In
Sure.
my book, you're not the number 1 team when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
But Neshannock's a good football team. There's no question about it. They're going to make a run in the playoffs. I have no doubt about that, because they normally are pretty well balanced, and they do all the little things. They don't beat themselves. They don't make mental mistakes. Even though I understand there may have been some breakdowns in the pass coverage because Beaver Falls passed it for 121 yards. They put up over 400 yards of total offense. So, but those are all good. Those are all good football teams. There's all good, and this could change before the year's out. Certainly based upon the regular season finish and what they do in the playoffs.
Yeah, we have a lot of balance in the county, maybe if you want to call it parity even, because like you mentioned earlier, Wilmington is traditionally a number 1 ranked team on our segments. They're now a 4. And even though they're still in the top half, Larry, they're not a team to take lightly for sure. And in Wilmington, Neshannock, Laurel, and Union, as you mentioned, they're probably like this close to each other. You could make a case for any of those 3 to be number 1. You could make another case for anyone to be 2, and another case for anyone to be 3. And if you wanted to really be step out of bounds, so to speak, take the easy way out, you could say 1A, 1B, 1C, if you want to just rank them that way, because they're that close.
They're that close. I agree with that. Those are 3 really, really good football teams. And again, the only differentiating factor I had between Neshannock and Laurel, and the reason, I know Neshannock beat Laurel, but that was double, triple overtime game. That game could have went either way. They gave up 400 yards against Beaver Falls. That's 400 total yards, 300 of which was on the ground. And, I'm sure that's troubling to their coaching staff.
Yeah. And remember, also, Larry, with that Neshannock win over Laurel was winning late in regulation when Peyton Weaver had that really, really gruesome injury. They were trailing at that point. That was in a confined amount of time, maybe within the last 2 minutes. So they didn't have much time to get it done. They were driving, but still, you're trying to fight those emotions, and your head's probably, in the locker room or how's Peyton, this and that. You're probably not focused totally on what's going on out there, but they were able to put it aside long enough, come together as a unit, and beat Laurel in double overtime, in a rivalry game. It wasn't like they were just playing a Beaver County school where, maybe they don't know all the kids on the other side. Those are county rivals. And that was impressive to me, that they were able to, just kind of say, all right, we'll worry about Peyton. Our thoughts are with him right now, but let's get this done. And then, we'll win the game for him and then check in on our guy. And so, yeah, that's why I have Neshannock. They beat him head to head. Great game. And I get it. You know, you went with Laurel, kind of a what have you done for me lately with Neshannock, giving up a lot of yardage to Beaver Falls. Laurel with a great overtime win against Union. So again, you know, we can split hairs all day. We could make them 1A, 1B, 1C if you want to.
But we're not going to do that because I'm willing to take a stand here and back up my point of view. And as I said, 3 great teams at the top. If Union had won, if they had beaten Laurel, they'd have been my number 1 team. And, you know, if Neshannock, you know, hadn't given up all of those yards against Beaver Falls, they probably would have been my number 1 team, certainly if they had beaten Beaver Falls. So 3 good football teams, should be exciting finish to the year.
Lastly, Larry, when you look at these 8 teams, how many teams make the playoffs out of these 8?
I say 4.
4?
Yeah.
Okay. So would it be your top 4? Would it be Wilmington, which is 4, Union, which is 3, Neshannock?
The top 4. Laurel,
Okay.
Neshannock, Union, Wilmington. I think that's who makes the playoffs.
Mohawk doesn't have you're not giving Mohawk a shot because, I mean, really, like, there's a fourth quarter, deep into the fourth quarter stop against Riverside, away from being 2-1 instead of 1-2. They're kind of an unknown for me because of that hazing and
But how many teams do they take out of that conference?
It's either 3 or 4. I can't remember what it is.
I mean, if they take 4 teams, they're going to go. I didn't know if they took that many teams, though. I really didn't. But look, they're going to get better as the year goes on. And I have a lot of respect for those kids. But I think 4 teams make the playoffs. If they take 4 teams out of the conference that Mohawk is playing in, I think they make it also, because I don't think they'll be any less than 4th place in that conference.
Give a little bit of praise to Newcastle, because in years past, the Canes have done this where they've struggled early, and then the schedule lightens later where they're playing teams that they can beat, like a Blackhawk, like a Char Valley, and they can regroup and kind of catch that last playoff spot. So
I'm going to stop you. I never want you to ever use the words Newcastle and they're playing teams they can beat in the same sentence anymore. Don't ever do that again. You understand? I'm a Red Hurricane. For years, we owned that conference.
Yeah.
Teams would come into Newcastle and their teeth would be rattling when they had to play at Taggart Stadium. So don't be using the lines, now they're playing teams they can beat. That cuts no ice with a real Newcastle guy. Listen, I don't want to hear that. You're going to make me mad now. I don't want to hear that. We'll be back. It'll be time. It'll happen. I remember before they won the Whippeal Championship in '98, it was either 3 or 4 seasons before that. They were 0-10, and it looked like this. So I don't want to hear, well, now we're playing teams we can beat. Newcastle can beat anybody.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see how it unfolds. For this week, they're down at Montour. I guess if you look at it your way, they couldn't beat Central Valley. That wasn't a close game. Well, can they beat Aliquippa in a couple weeks?
No, this year they can't. They're going to lose those games. They can't. But the goal is to try to develop a culture moving forward, try to develop these young men and make them football players moving forward, so that 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we're not having the conversation, well, geez, we're playing a team we can beat. Those teams are coming into Taggart Stadium saying, man, we got to play the Red Hurricane. That's going to be a tough sled.
Yeah.
I still believe.
Okay. All right, Larry, we still got some time. Still got some time to get it done. All of these teams have some time to get it done. Make a push for a conference title or a push for the playoffs, depending on which team we're talking about. Anything else, Larry, that you'd like to say about?
No, it's going to get exciting. It's the last 3 or 4 weeks of the regular season always are exciting. There's going to be some great games. There already have been. I'm excited to watch them, see how these local teams do. And then before we blink our eyes, there'll be a few snowflakes in the air and the playoffs will be starting.
All right. Well, Cinderella, it is pushing 8 p.m. here. I want you to get to the ball as soon as you can. So, Larry, I thank you for joining us here this week, and enjoy all the games that are coming up this weekend. If you're going to any, Larry, are you going to a game this weekend?
I don't know. I think I'm going to be out of town this weekend, so I probably won't be any games this weekend. But I'm going to make a few more as the year goes on.
Have you made any yet this year? You probably
I was at the Shenango Union game. I did see that one.
Yeah, I remember you saying you were going for homecoming. So, okay. All right. Well, he's Larry Kelly. I'm Ron Poniewasz. Enjoy your rankings. If you have any thoughts on agree, disagree with us, be sure to tell us about it on Twitter. Send us an email to ncsports@ncnewsonline.com. Tell us we're nuts. If you have to, hey,